I listened to the new album from the Gorillaz, which just came out. It's called Cracker Island. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the Gorillaz because I actually feel like, and of course, if you're not familiar with the Gorillaz, which I feel like everyone must be in some capacity, of course, they are almost definitely most well known for what I would argue is one of the most unique and best songs ever written, which is Feel Gooding. And I think everyone would be familiar with that song. But then again, it came out in like 2006, and I know lots of young people listen to this show, so maybe you don't know. That song was a really big deal. I think, and I love the new Gorillaz album. I talked about it on Mike Listens, at mike.listens on Instagram and TikTok if you want to see music and album reviews pretty much every day. Wanted to talk a bit more about the Gorillaz as a band because what I think is interesting, I think they're so interesting and maybe not many people really know how the Gorillaz works because as a band, the Gorillaz was kind of like a side project started by Damon Albarn, who was the frontman for Blur, most of whom will know from song 2, Woohoo! And I feel heavy metal, right? And the Gorillaz are like a virtual band. Like they have it was all about, I kind of always read it as being about eliminating the celebrity aspect to music by actually creating 4 characters, the Gorillaz, who were the band. And, you know, if you've seen the album covers, you will know the 4 kind of monkey looking characters who are sort of the Gorillaz. And creating a backstory of this fictional band called the Gorillaz who are playing the music and creating the music and star in the music videos, when really, of course, behind the scenes, it's Damon Albarn, who has collaborated with his friend who is a comic book artist and who designs all these characters, and then collaborating with a lot of like hip-hop artists and other artists and making the music together. And then on the live shows, of course, they perform it, but they also have the characters kind of there on screens as well, as if they're there playing the music. And I think what I find really fascinating about this is, one, I actually think because of this, lots of people don't actually know that Gorillaz is like a side project of Blur. And it probably, especially now, like it probably is bigger and more successful than Blur. But what I also think is that Blur kind of in the 90s was a very successful Britpop band who very famously competed with Oasis. And there was a big rivalry between Oasis and Blur in the 90s, a very big rivalry, like, you know, an aggressive rivalry, I suppose you could say. And I think ultimately Oasis at the time was the more successful band and kind of won that and sort of rubbed their nose in Blur that they were better, they were bigger, and etc. But I actually think that Gorillaz sort of proves that Damon Albarn was a more competent and successful kind of creative and creator and songwriter than the Gallagher brothers from Oasis. And I think because the Gorillaz was just so unique, like you listen to Feel Good Inc. and I just think that song is just unmatched in creativity. I genuinely think it is one of the most creative songs ever. The way it flows, the beat, the feel good, like that whole thing about it. But also just the creative visionary of Albarn to create that band as a virtual band and be like, I'm not the face of this band, right? And of course, like music fans know it's him, but I think just creating something that is totally new and unseen. And to this day, I can't really think of anyone who's done something similar. And of course, you could make that argument that someone like David Bowie had like, he had characters, like he had like Aladdin Sane and Ziggy Stardust, and he put on characters. And then you've got like My Chemical Romance, who had like the Black Parade, and then they did Danger Days, the Fabulous Killjoys, and they all got into character and they had personas for that album. And I find that really fascinating, but I've never seen someone do it so successfully on the same level as Gorillaz with their characters and the characters that they created. And they all have backstories and they all have relationships with each other. And even this week I saw Anthony Fantano, the Needle Drop, who's probably one of the biggest music critics in the world, particularly on YouTube, very popular. He did an interview with one of the Gorillaz, like as an animation, as a character, which I just find the whole thing really interesting, and it's lived on, and they've had some really good songs. I really like Superfast Jellyfish. They had a album a few years ago called Humans, and they had a song on that called Andromeda. And then on their most recent album, there's this fantastic song towards the end called Skinny Ape, which I love. I just love the experimentation, the creativity, the artistic merit to it all. And I think the reason that band lives on is because, one, it's Damon Albarn just collaborating with all these different artists. For example, Feel Good Inc. was a collaboration with De La Soul, who are the ones doing the rapping. But then, Damon is the voice of the lead singer character of the Gorillaz, who I can't even remember his name. It's like 2D or something. They all have different names and designs and stuff. And I would love to know if anyone knows of any groups or artists or bands that are sort of like virtual or not real, or like there's like a persona about that band or that group, because I just find the whole thing with the Gorillaz is just so fascinating. And the new album's great. I highly recommend checking it out. I think it's like their 6th or 7th album, and they've probably now put out more albums, the Gorillaz, than Blur did, or maybe around the same. But yeah, I would love to know people's like thoughts on the Gorillaz more generally.